You're looking at a portrait of John Diefenbaker, the Prime Minister of Canada from 1957 to 1963. I'm Kevin Waugh, the MP of Saskatoon-Grasswood, along with the Honourable Pierre Poilievre, and we're at the Diefenbaker Canada Centre, no doubt. And is this your first attempt to kind of see history here for Saskatchewan, being the last Prime Minister, the Conservative Prime Minister in those years of 57 to 63?
It's great to be here. In fact, I have a great affinity for Prime Minister Diefenbaker. He met my mother, who's from Saskatchewan, at her high school graduation, which made her a Conservative for life, and probably she transmitted that conservatism on to me. So I have, in a strange way, Diefenbaker to thank for where I am here today. And so a great moment to be back in Saskatchewan, where I have family roots, to examine this great history of a wonderful Prime Minister.
Yeah, I often bring MPs from outside of Saskatchewan here. This is one of the stops. You need to see the history of Diefenbaker. You need to see the history of Saskatchewan, the Conservative movement back in the late 50s. And this is just a wonderful centre. It's well maintained, a lot of history in here.
Well, we're right in the reconstructed office of Prime Minister Diefenbaker. We have his desk here. Yeah. We have behind us, this is, of course, our first Prime Minister, John A. Macdonald, of whom Diefenbaker was a great admirer. Yeah. And Kevin, I think, Kevin, if you look here, this is another hero of Diefenbaker's, Abraham Lincoln. And Carl Sandburg had a multi-volume, legendary biography on the great American president who signed the Emancipation Proclamation. And here's a quote that I think we should all remember when we go through hard times in the media. This is from Abraham Lincoln, and it was on the wall of Prime Minister Diefenbaker, and it says, "If I were trying to read, much less answer, all the attacks made on me, this shop might well be closed for any other business." Abraham Lincoln. And that's a good reminder for all politicians who come under attack. Of course, Diefenbaker did, but he persevered. And, of course, signed the Canadian Bill of Rights.
Yes, that was the big one, I think, for everyone in this country, the Bill of Rights. Maybe just talk about that and what, back then in the late 50s and 60s, what that meant to Canadians.
Well, it protected the right of free speech, the right of property ownership, freedom of religion. It extended rights to people who had not had them before. And that was really the start of extending and the codifying in law, I should say, and in statute, the rights that Canadians inherited from the British parliamentary system. And it was in the great tradition of the Magna Carta that now goes back 800 years that ensures that the citizen is master and the government is servant. And we ought to maintain that. I think often of what Diefenbaker wrote down on the Bill of Rights. He said, "I am a Canadian, free to speak without fear, free to worship in my own way, free to support what I think right, free to oppose what I believe wrong. It is this heritage of freedom that I pledge to uphold and protect for all of mankind." He wrote those words back in the early 60s, and here we are celebrating him in his old prime ministerial office.
This is really something. The Diefenbaker Canada Centre is open to everybody, and it's open all summer. I think Canadians need to come through here and just feel government, feel about back what happened in 57 to 63, and see some of the history of Saskatchewan and one of the great prime ministers of this country.
Absolutely. So as someone who lives in Ontario, I encourage all Canadians to make the trip out to wonderful Saskatchewan, not just for the sunset or the people, but also to witness history here at the Diefenbaker Centre.
Thank you, Pierre. Kevin Waugh and Pierre Poilievre at the Diefenbaker Canada Centre on the campus at the University of Saskatchewan.